Welcome to Engineer Versus. This is Introduction to Prezi, Part 2, Working with Prezi. So what we saw in the introduction was essentially signing up for an account. And once you sign up for an account, you've explored around, you've learned a little bit, you've gotten some support, maybe took a good look at what Prezi can offer you. Now let's go start and play with it a little bit. I recommend that you open your first presentation, that you start just playing around with it just to get used to it. And there's a couple versions that you can start with as this loads up. You'll see that basically you can start out with a blank one. We will start with that, but you can also take a look at some templates as well. If you see a template that you want to play with, you can see that they have good templates with world maps, with something where you have 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just very linear. All sorts of different things to play with, and you can also search for different templates as well. So I'll just type in green here, and you can see that they have a few different green ones to choose from. This one's called From Roots to Results. Essentially, these are templates that either Prezi has done or others have done and added, and Prezi's put them up there. So you can see this is a nice visual here, as is this. The circuit board's decent. I like the one that has the clouds because it has the cloud computing as well. But they also have, examination, assembly, or explain a topic. So you might want to look at those as far as templates to start with. You can also apply the template after you've started. But first off, we're going to start with a blank slate. This is it. Welcome to Prezi. You're in the editing mode. This is similar to other programs, and I can use my scroll button on my mouse. If you're using a Macintosh, you can just scroll out. Also, you can scroll in and out without too much problem. But you can see it has a grid system here so that you can keep track of how big things are in relation to one another. So if you're zooming in and you're really starting to play with something, you can see more of these squares show up in a very light gray, smoky pattern there. But essentially what they give you first off, right out of the box, is this frame. Now the frames is what Prezi uses for presenting. This frame becomes what it zooms to whenever you're presenting in front of others, or if you're working with the different files. And what we'll do is we'll zoom to frame, and notice that the grid will disappear whenever we zoom to the frame. That means that we can't click on this frame or any other frames, but we're going to be working with this particular frame itself. Now what we can do here is add some text, and I'll just do that now. Engineer Versus, that's us. And we'll say, what is a circle frame? Well, that's kind of what we're going over now. So you notice I added some text. You can go and just click on this and edit the text. And you notice this is a body text. And I can scroll this in and out, back and forth to shorten up the box. And the reason I want to do that is I want to grab this hand and move it, and it's going to center it with the text that's here. So even if, say, I scroll this out, it's still going to want to center the text as opposed to the box itself. So that's a nice feature that Prezi has. And even without going to the edit mode, you can sort of stretch this box back and forth. Now if you go to the corners, it stretches the whole thing out. So it scales it out proportionally. So you don't have to worry about resizing, but it will go, say, with this, the other boxes that are around it, it'll start to read what's nearby. So we centered that on there, and we've edited it, and we have this, and we have edited it, and it's fine. Now if I click out here, I can do something else with more text. So EVS. Now, the other two were subtitle and body text, so I'm going to make this a title text. I'm going to scroll this in just a tad if I can. Oh, yeah, if it'll let me. Oh, not this time. But I'm going to stretch this out. Let's scroll it in this way. And then I'm going to center it on the others, just like that. And now, what I want to do is, let's edit the text some more. I want to add, say, my color. Well, notice the color palette here isn't too special. So that's a limitation whenever you start with Prezi, but you can add the RGB colors later if you change your theme. And we'll talk about that when we're editing. But I'm going to go with this dark burgundy here color. And you notice that whenever I scrolled it in, it didn't scroll it in this way, mostly because it stops that way. But I'm also going to say, okay, add a background to that. And that background is going to stay there. And then I can shift that in and out just like that. And I also want to say, okay, you know what? I want this to be centered within that background and see how that's going to go with the centering of the text. So that's what we're looking at here. So it can move back and forth, and you can see how I can center that and stretch it out. All right, so that's a nice feature to Prezi as well. Now I'm going to move this over, and again, I'm just going to center that. But because I added that and added this box here, boom, it added that background. And suddenly you have a little bit more flavor. Now I can do the same here, and I can edit the text, and boom, it adds that for the flavor. And do the same here, and I can edit this, and it adds that grayish there. Now, what I did up here, I liked. I want to use that, and I want to use it not just on this presentation, but others as well. So I'm going to add to favorites, and it'll say add to favorites, and it'll say if you want to use it again, you can see insert my content. So let's look at the insert button, and it has my content right there if I want to insert it again. But while we're on that button, you can see that we can insert all sorts of different items. So we can insert images, shapes, symbols, YouTube video, but we can also add other video as well if you have video saved down. You could add content that you're saving on Prezi. You can add layouts. You can draw an arrow, a line, a highlighter. You can also add background music. So if you have something that might be playing or something like that that goes with it, you can. And you can add a voiceover to the different paths. So some of the complex items that you might see in, say, PowerPoint with adding voices or timing of slides, you can do the same thing in Prezi as well. You can add content from PDFs, from all sorts of files, from file, and it'll try to read it as best it can. You can also upload a PowerPoint, so if you have a PowerPoint that you've already worked with and you want to just start out with that, you can certainly do that and start to move the content around. I've started to do that. It's a little bit more advanced that you can do as well. Now, one of the other things that's neat about Prezi is now I have this, I am pressing Control on a regular Windows PC, and I am then clicking on the next item, and it automatically groups it. I do the same thing again, and it's all grouped together now. Now I can slide this around how I want within this particular frame, because I'm still within the frame, editing within that frame. I can group it, I can ungroup it. You can see I can change that to an ungroup if I want, and then I can delete the whole thing if I wanted. But I can also go in and change it individually by ungrouping. Essentially, it puts it all together to shift or move all at the same time, and it makes it very easy to do that back and forth, in and out. All right, let's look to add another frame. So that frame is our first path there, that's our first point. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, scroll over just a tad. Oh, maybe I'll go this way. And I can add a circle frame here, and you can see how you can add the frames. Or I can add a bracket, a rectangle, or an invisible frame. So let's go ahead and add a bracket. And what I'll do is I can just hit that button, or I can drag it over. So you can see how it's either way. Now the bracket is just basically a rectangle that's, and you can see I'm centering it on this circle here. It's a rectangle that basically doesn't have the top and the bottom. And I'm going to stretch it out. And, you know, get it proportionally about the same. I can move it around, and again, plopping it right in here. Now, notice that you can change this. So if I don't like the bracket and I say, you know what, I just want to do the rectangle, you can change it on the fly. I can also change this one from a circle to a rectangle to invisible. So if you are working in, say, a file and you don't want the edges of the frames to be seen, or maybe it's looking a little bit odd or that kind of thing, you can go ahead and make it invisible and just use your background color. So when you're presenting, you won't see this grid on there, that light line grid. But if you do put in this rectangle, you'll have a nice gradient behind there that can sort of mask. It's transparent, but it can let you know that yes, this is the subject matter that's contained within. This is what we're looking at. So let's zoom into the frame here. And what I want to do is I'm going to add a few frames that are going to be inside of this. So it's nested frames. And I'm going to add a couple brackets here. And the other thing is I can use this and say I don't like that. Why do I want to do that? Oops. I want to click on this frame eventually here. Oh, come on. And I can add items inside of it, but it'll be inside this frame and not inside the other frame. So if I say that this is frame 3, it's keeping that title because that's the changes I made to the title. That's what it's using for that title. If I decide to use that, it's using the subtitle or the body. Notice it kept all the background to that. I can take it away also, but I can also look over here and say, all right, I'm going to insert my content, and this is where your content, which is here, shows up. So notice what I have here is this EVS as a title, but I also have this, what is a circle frame? So this is actually from some other work that I've done thus far, and what I was trying to show here is if you have some other presentations that you have, other presentation content, what you have will show up. It's very convenient, especially if you have a lot of content that you're looking to have some consistency with, say, images or logos or text or colors that you might have. That's what you can add. Now I'll click on that. I can just drag it in. Boom, plops it right in. Same size as before, same everything, and I can move this guy around. So if you want to have the same thing or same theme, you can. So if I want to have this as like part 2, part 3, whatever you want, you can do that. So zooming back out again, I'm going to click on this frame, and what I can do is look to copy that, and it's a straight Control-C, Control-V, and it'll copy it right on over. So that's nice because it'll keep the size of that the same. So if you're looking for that consistency, it'll do it. And then if you're looking to just line those guys up, oop, I need to go back on that. Oh, is it going to take me back? It's not. It's got it way over. Yeah. So I want to go back to this. It was zooming out automatically, so I can zoom to this frame, which is the one I was working on. So you notice how it flipped me out way over the side. So that's another thing that it can do as well. So I'm plopping this in, and this already has everything in it, but notice because I'm zoomed out that it took the scale with it. So because I was zoomed in before, whenever I copied it, now if I zoom out some more, watch this. Plop it in, boom, it's going to be bigger. So keep that in mind if you're trying to get the same size. Your scaling, your zooming is going to matter whenever you're trying to do things a little bit more easily like that. Alright, let's zoom to this frame. This is frame 3, or is it? This is going to be, actually this is looking to be the frame 4, right? So what we can call this, well, actually I'm just going to delete that, and I might delete this frame as well, and delete this guy. So what I want to do is add a rectangle in here, and I'm going to do that here, and what I want to do this time is start to take a look at what I can do to insert an image within there. Now you have a number of images that you can get off of Prezi. You can do that, but you can also add your own files. Look at that, I can add some here, and what you may notice is as soon as I go and add one of these, what might happen is it might freak out and say, oh, your image is too large. Look at that. So you can use that. It may crash Prezi, but if you don't intend to zoom into it, we recommend you resize it, and you can resize the image. Now this is where it gets complicated. If you try to do effects or things like that, it can crash Prezi. So be aware of that before you do the imports and realize what it can mean whenever you're doing things. So we're going to even shrink it down a little bit and move it up into the corner. And then that way, if we get to that frame 4, and you notice it's added 1, 2, 3, 4, that it will have that logo up in the or that picture up in the upper left there. I'm going to add also a number of images from Prezi. All those are free for you to use. I'd say that you're basically, it's a, you know, you're going to be scanning through here forever. There's going to be some nice ones that you're going to want to add, but in most cases I can't see that you're going to be able to add anything that's too particular. Oh, lost Prezi there for a moment. But the other thing I'll point out is it's saving, and here we're saved at 1250. It does save it about every minute or two along the way, so don't be afraid to do that as well. Alright, so we've added some images, we've done some things, we've inserted some things. We'll customize in the next section, but one of the last things I want to do is I'll draw an arrow here, and I'll draw this arrow to say, okay, we're going to go from 1 to 2, and I like this style a bit, but I want to change it actually to this green right here. Oops. And I can change the arrow thickness, and I can keep going up to a point, I believe. Yeah, that's the point. And I can also decrease it as needed. I'm just going to keep it at that very thickest, fattest way I can do it, and then I could save it to the favorites if I wanted. Now, what you can do is move this over as well, but also notice that you can do curves, all sorts of different things. So if I want to go from this curved circle, for example, it'll snap to that object, and I want to put this, say, okay, let's put this right in here, and I want to have it progress from inside the circle to over here. And notice that if I do select it other ways, that I can move it around just by itself, so you don't need to make all these adjustments if you don't want to. Also, if you don't like what you just did, you can hit undo, and it undoes, you know, a number of steps almost infinitely. It just saved again there, so it's like every minute it saves. And now I'm going to insert, say, a line, and this line I want to go, say, from, I don't know, say I want to have a big slash right here, so you have one over the other, and it does the same thing. I'm going to thin that up a little bit and leave that there, leave the style, everything, so you can start to draw these objects in here. And then I can add highlighter in here and start to do some highlighting items. That's all freehand, so I tend not to use it. It tends to be a little bit distracting. But you can add the highlighter to say, okay, I want to really highlight this point right here, frame 3. And because of that, we'll zoom to the frame, and what we can do here is we can animate. We can start animating some objects that are in here. It's a little bit more customized. You can animate a bunch of different objects, and they will show up just as they might otherwise, but basically you can bring forward, push back, all these different options here with the, within this. So I can, if I have this behind something, I can send it backward, and now I can move it behind there so it's not over top of that frame 3 where it's saying that. Alright, and then what I can do is animate frame contents, and it brings me to a different page in order to do that. So it says, oh, apply a fade in effect. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want, and you might recognize that similar to, say, a PowerPoint. And it'll bring you to this animation window for this frame. So it's applying this fade in effect right there, so that's number 1. And what you can say is, I don't want that fade in effect. I actually want it here. Apply that fade in effect to this frame. You can do that as well. And then what we'll do here is apply the fade in effect as well. And what you notice here is that you have your numbers change as well. So you can give a basically your frame content is how you're changing that. So you can also preview how that's done. And you fade in, okay, done, great. Brings you back out, and you can start to adjust. Another thing I'll mention is you can add text that's out here, and I'll say, you know, summary. I'll add in that text and I'll say move it down here. And what I want to do is put in a summary frame, and I'll have this as an invisible frame, and it goes right there. But I'm going to stretch this guy, and notice it stretches on the middle, so if you stretch from the corner like that, realize you're going to have to move it over. I want to stretch this guy to encompass everything else. So everything is going to be inside this invisible frame. All that's going to work for us. What we can do is zoom to that frame, and that'll be the overall picture, so that you can say, hey, this is everything that we've done. Everything that you've seen that's on this particular presentation is right here for you to view. We walked through it and did it all. Now you can also move these frames around, by the way. So if I want to change, say, 3 to 4, I can change it just like that. And what it will do is it will change in the presentation order. But what I can also do is I can say, okay, edit path, I can start the presentation, all these different items as well. And what I'll also do is I can add another invisible frame, and I can have it at the beginning and at the end. So I can match this. Oops, I forgot. We're going to the middle here. And what it can do is I'll have a frame 5 and a frame 6 here. It'll be very similar in size and such. I'm going to move this frame 6, and instead of being frame 6, I am going to say frame 5 is my first frame. So whenever we're starting this presentation, it starts here, and then it goes along, it zooms into the circle. We should glide over to frame 3. We should have some animation in frame 3 and 4. And then with 5, we should see the, or I'm sorry, with 4 and 5, some animation. And then with that, we should be able to zoom out to the end. All right, so let's try it. Let's present and see how this goes. So I would ask you if you want full keyboard controls. Yeah, why not? And that allows you to use the arrow keys and other keys. So everything that you have animated is missing. So those 2 frames that we had animated aren't there. That's why they're not there, all right? So it gives us that first frame that says, here's the overall presentation, just like you might see in others that you might look at. Frame number 1, boom, was our circle frame, right? We know what's in there. Frame number 3, or I'm sorry, this is frame number 2, because the first frame was actually the invisible frame. Frame number 3, and then frame number 4 fades in, frame number 5 fades in. We can zoom to it, each of those, and then it zooms back out for the summary, and our presentation is done. That's a basic overview of everything that we have. We are going to go into the editing mode next, and we're going to look at some of the customizations that you can do in the next section. All right, let's finish up, and we'll see you shortly.